Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to brainstorm ideas with you on ways RPGs can move past the fighting, sneaking, talking triad that, let's face it, has been done to death since the 90s. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what we pushed really hard with Fallout was, can you fight past things? Can you sneak past things? Can you talk past things? But Fallout was made in 1997. We can do better. We can do more. And that's kind of what I want to talk about here. And also, this will let you kind of see what goes on in a brainstorming session. I've talked about them before on here. This is kind of what I mean by what a brainstorming session is. So, one of the initial ways I'm going to have you think about it is how could those multiple techniques, fight, sneak, talk, be blended? Now, some of them have been done a lot, like fight and sneak. In a lot of games, there are sneak attacks where if the opponent is unaware of you because of your stealth, then when you attack, you get a stealth attack, and it does bonus damage or does more criticals, or you have a better chance of hitting, whatever it is. But can't more be done? Can't there be something about your other stealth related skills that could help you be better in combat? That's something to think about. Similarly, if you want to combine sneak with dialogue, you could introduce like disguises. We did that in the Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds had a gadget you could find called the holographic shroud. And when you wore it, it let you go into some places that you weren't normally allowed into. And your stealth mechanic determined how close you could get to guards or how much time you had when they could see you before they'd question you. And then when they questioned you, you needed your dialogue skills to convince them you were supposed to be there. But again, are there ways of combining stealth and dialogue, sneak talk? Are there ways of blending those that go beyond that? Are there more ways you can think of to put them together? Similarly, the other of the three is combining fighting and talking. So fighting and dialogue. Is there some way you can use your dialogue skills in combat? There have been ideas I've explored in my games where you can buff or debuff. You can buff your companions, you can debuff enemies through the use of your dialogue skills. But maybe there's even more stuff you can do. Even in MMOs, there's usually an entire role in groups called crowd control. And those are people who can make some enemies flee, can make some enemies fight on your side, can make some enemies be stunned or dazed and just sit there not fighting. Are there ways you could do that through dialogue systems? So your talker is taking an active role in combat to manage and crowd control enemies. There's got to be some great ideas in there that have not been used yet. Now, I mentioned Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds introduced a fourth role that I called leadership. And leadership was how good your companions were. As your leadership skill went up, your companions did better in combat, for the most part. This could be taken a lot farther. Maybe leadership skill is even needed to get companions. That better companions or difficult companions that are higher level or have more skills or have rarer skills or items need a higher leadership skill even to get. Maybe you can have more companions in your group depending on your leadership skill. Maybe low leadership people can't have anybody. They got a solo. And then as your leadership skill goes up, you can have 1, 2, 3 companions with you. Those are things that could be explored. Well, just like blending two roles at a time that we just talked about with fight, sneak, sneak talk, and fight talk, you could blend leadership with any of those previous three. So leadership and combat could combine to make your companions better in combat. That's kind of what Outer Worlds did. That as your leadership skill went up, your companions fought better in combat. Either they did more damage, they had access to more powerful attacks, they would be harder to hurt. Their damage resistance went up, or they could be revived. All these things that just make them better in combat. But you could combine leadership and talking. Now, a little bit of that was done in our worlds where you got bonuses to your skill if you had a companion in your party who had that same skill. But I'm talking about going much farther than that, where their skills in dialogue are basically yours to use, where they will actually step in and say something. So if an engineering role is needed to say a line, instead of you saying it, if you have a high engineering skill companion, they're the ones who step in, and they're in your party. They step in and say, hey, I know how that shield generator works. Maybe we can do this. Or if you have one that's got a good animal handling skill, they can step in and go, hey, I know a way to get those raptidons from attacking us. And they do it in combat. In dialogue. So that's a good way of combining your leadership role and your dialogue skills. And then similarly, you could combine leadership and sneaking. One way to do that would be to let your companions distract NPCs while you're trying to do some of your stealth. Maybe you're just trying to get past them. Maybe you're trying to pick open a lock on a chest. Maybe you're trying to hack a computer. Maybe you're trying just to get into some warehouse. You're trying to, just get in through a door that they're guarding. A leadership sneak blend lets your companions go up and distract the NPC so they look away, giving you bonuses on doing whatever it is you're trying to do. And by the way, as a side note, this is a great place where procedural dialogue could factor in, because what does your companion do to distract them? I mean, assuming they're not going to attack them, they have to walk up and say something like, hey, what are you doing here? What is this place? Or maybe they ask for directions to some other place on the map. This is why this has to be a procedural dialogue. They take some location on the map that your character knows about that's not nearby, and they ask directions to it. Maybe if your companion is hurt, they ask the NPC, hey, do you know a good place I can get healed? Do you know a doctor? Do you know where I can buy a stim pack? These are just things that are just procedurally generated to distract the guard. And if none of those apply, it just falls back to a bank of things like, hey, can I bum a cigarette off you? I mean, there's always something you can fall back on. So that's just ways that leadership could combine with those other three. Well, what about brand new ways of having player styles of play? And I'm not talking about healing or making bardic characters, because usually healing is just something like, oh, this is how you help in combat, and bards or spell users are just, here's ways of doing things in combat. I'm talking about a different way of approaching the role and the idea of the player character. For example, we could do a lot more with items, crafting of items, improvement of items. You could basically think of a character who spends all their points in creating items, tinkering to make existing items or crafted items better, and repairing, because if you have degradation in your game, then this is the character that can repair it. This blends really well with the base triad. You can make, with this character, better armor and weapons for fighting. You could make gadgets that make you harder to see, like camouflage clothing, or to hear, like, sound suppressors. You could even make gadgets that make you better in conversation. Hypnagogic goggles, or some kind of hypno ray or gas that you can use, that maybe it takes all of the dialogue skills that you need on this one NPC and lowers them a lot. So a character who spent a lot of their points in these other things can get by with having lower fighting skills, lower stealth skills, and lower combat skills. And to keep this from being something where you make these items and just give them out to your companions, these could be controlled by something that's on the player. Maybe it requires a certain amount of energy or batteries. Maybe you have to have slots in your Batman belt or something that makes it unique to you. Another kind of player role would be just a pure perception-based character. This is a character who might spend their points in skills like psychology or medicine or search. And then it combines with that base 3. For example, having a high medical skill may let you know enemy weak spots. So when you fight them in combat, you get bonuses on hitting them in those weak spots. Maybe having a high psychology skill it highlights dialogue choices that either it lets you know where they're lead, like it highlights ones that will lead to them liking you better, or maybe you can see it gives you a glimpse into what the next node, like if you click on this is what the next dialogue node's going to be. Maybe even does things like highlights things and saying this is contradictory to something you've seen or discovered somewhere else. So that basically it lets you know this person is lying to you. But it doesn't do it through you're trying to lie to them. It's not a lie skill that lets you lie to them. It lets you know that they're lying to you, and you need this skill to get through there. And then the search-based one, maybe it just lets you find hidden things. You find hidden chests of items, hidden caches. You find secret doors. It lets you figure out, oh, you know what? I could probably get this vent cover off, so this is a way I can get in. And you need search to find that. So this perception-based character who's spending a lot of points in those skills can get by with having less dialogue, less stealth, or less combat abilities because they've increased these other ones. These are the kind of things I love talking about in brainstorming sessions. And I encourage you to think along these lines and be creative. Because as much as I love the fight, sneak, talk triad, it's been 30 years. We can do more and we can do better. So this is what I'm trying to encourage you guys to think about. So I thought I'd do a video like this that might get you going and get you thinking about things that you can do in your own game. And I hope this helps.